It is important to me to demonstrate my remorse and regret without blame. I take full accountability for my choices, and it is my preference that I serve a prison sentence.
Hey, what's up everyone? Welcome to Therapy Today. My name is Isaiah and I'm a licensed professional counselor. Today we continue our coverage of the Ruby Frankie and Jody Hildebrand cases. Recently we've been covering their sentencing hearings, and we also covered an interview from Adam Steed, one of Jody Hildebrand's previous clients/victims, and today we're diving into the statement of the mom who started this whole saga. Ruby Frankie was sentenced the same day as Jody Hildebrand, and we are just now getting to her statement. Now, full disclosure, I haven't watched this yet, so I wanted to give you my unfiltered reaction to what she says, what she claims, and one of the big points of analysis leading up to this is how much would she try to pin it on Jody Hildebrand and try to get out of the crosshairs in terms of her culpability, her responsibility when it came to the abuses of her children. We might be able to touch on some issues with mental health, the counselor and client relationship that was obviously very messed up in the Ruby Frankie and Jody Hildebrand case, as well as issues with parenting that she might touch on. So please make sure you like and subscribe so you can stay up to date with all of our coverage of this situation and other mental health news. Let's dive into it.
Ms. Frankie has a statement she'd like to make.
She does.
Thank you. Judge Walt.
You don't have to bend down.
Okay, thank you. I would like to make a statement without any intent to change my stipulated sentence. For the past 4 years, I've chosen to follow counsel and guidance that has led me into a dark delusion. My distorted version of reality went largely unchecked as I would isolate from anyone who challenged me. I was led to believe that this world was an evil place, filled with cops who control, hospitals that injure, government agencies that brainwash, church leaders who lie and lust, husbands who refuse to protect.
Very interesting. So her statement seems to be putting a lot of the responsibility on Jody Hildebrand being her counselor and leading her down this, what sounds like a lot of conspiracy theories, talking about church leadership being a problem, which actually her talking about church leadership being compromised is very interesting because of all of the ties that Jody Hildebrand had with the Mormon church. So I'm not sure if she will detail some of that later on, but it does sound like she's trying to put a lot of the blame and a lot of the responsibility on Jody Hildebrand's shoulders for steering her in this direction where she would be distrustful of people who didn't think the same way that she would, which does happen a lot with both cults and with conspiracy theories, where you find the people who disagree with you, you tend to isolate from and try to find more like-minded people, and it gets you deeper and deeper into that particular group or community.
And children who need abused. My choice to believe and behave this paranoia culminated into criminal activity for which I stand before you today ready to take accountability. Jody Hildebrand was never my business partner, nor was I ever employed by her. I have never received wages from her or connections. Jody was employed as my son's counselor in 2019, and in 2020 I paid her to be my mentor.
That's really interesting that she would say that Jody Hildebrand was never her business partner, she never got money from connections. And I think that may be factually true on the paper trail. Maybe she was considered like a contractor, or they maybe never had an official business partnership. But looking at some of the connections videos, it does seem like they were very clearly working together. For her to claim that she and Jody Hildebrand didn't have anything more than a counselor-client relationship, I think it's patently and obviously untrue, but I don't know why she would feel the need to make that claim at this point, except maybe to disentangle herself from Jody Hildebrand's narrative, which has a much longer history of abuses.
It is important to me to demonstrate my remorse and regret without blame. I take full accountability for my choices, and it is my preference that I serve a prison sentence. Thank you to the officers in Santa Clara and the Ivan City Police, Nick Hellman, Brian Palufo, Cy Pikuvit, Mike Pondoyo in Tobler, John Ward, Dee Lewis, and Chief Flowers. You were the angels who came and saved my children. I especially want to thank Detective Jay Bate. She plucked me out of a situation I didn't know how to get out of. And the moment she handcuffed me was the moment I gained my freedom. You were not the controlling ones. I was. Thank you to the medical staff at Intermountain Hospital. Your skill, tenderness, and professionalism helped heal my children. Jody and I inflicted the injuries, not the hospital.
So far, so good. No matter how sincere or not you believe she might be, she seems to be saying the right things to really be, at least verbally in this statement, separating herself from Jody Hildebrandt, which is very different from the reported response from Jody Hildebrandt, where she was making phone calls that were recorded and saying that she's being wrongfully accused and that she's the victim here. As far as I know, Ruby Franke has not said anything to the contrary yet, so it at least sounds a lot more believable than when I was hearing Jody Hildebrandt's statement.
Thank you to DCFS, the Children's Justice Center, Judge Basil, and other key adults. You've gathered my children under your wing and offered them love, compassion, encouragement. You were not the ones who were doing the brainwashing. Thank you to my Bishop Tom Hawks and my state president Jim Nilsson for reminding me of the Lord's love for the lost. So much pain and suffering would have been avoided had I followed and heeded your counsel. I was the one who was deceived, not you. Thank you to the Washington County Prosecutor's Office, Ryan Sham, the legal assistants and discovery clerks. Eric Clark, you exemplified to me how justice and mercy are meant to coexist. My charges are just. They offer safety to my family, accountability to the public, and they did show mercy to me. Thank you to my attorney Lamar Winward and his staff. I would not be where I am today without them. Thank you to Randy Kester for your limitless energy in healing my family. My dear friends, Pam and Roy, I'm so sorry for letting you down. Because of your association with me, your innocence was called into question. My mother-in-law, father-in-law, Kevin's family, my cousins, aunts, uncles, nieces, nephews, and neighbors, you all saw the warning signs long before I did, and you did what you could.
This list of thank yous is getting longer than something that you might see at the Oscars. I am curious though, because someone pointed out to me in the Jody Hildebrandt video that Kevin, Frankie, and a couple of the kids are sitting on like the bottom of your screen, so when it pans out then you actually see the backs of their heads. I wonder what it would be like for them to be hearing this, for her to be thanking all of these people in the midst of all of this, when they were some of the ones who were directly harmed and they haven't really been addressed in all of this so far. I would have thought an apology to them would have been at the top of the list. But I'm not the one writing these statements for her, so let's just keep watching through and see if she does end up mentioning the family members that she's most directly hurt.
You wanted to help, but I pushed you away. My mother and father, I have been utterly wretched to you. You have offered me unconditional love, and for that I have offered you unconditional contempt.
What she is touching on here is another thing that kind of goes hand in hand with both cults and with conspiracy theorists. People who are genuinely trying to help them get out of this destructive cycle will often be seen with contempt as being people who are trying to lead them astray from the truth, or who are brainwashed themselves, or are just too simple to see how things actually are. And so her acknowledging that does fall into line with people who are coming out of cults, people who are coming out of conspiracy theories, who really did isolate themselves because they felt like they were the only ones with a handle on the truth, and every time someone would try to argue them out of it or debate with them, that just convinced them more and more of how right they are.
My siblings and their spouses, because of my decision to roll around in a pigsty, I have dragged your families through the mud in public. Yet, when I desired to return as the prodigal sister, unlike the prodigal's brother in the Bible, you synced step with my parents and ran out to greet me. Your capacity to love is unprecedented. Kevin, my husband of more than 23 years. You are the love of my life. I'm so sorry to leave to you to finish what we both started together. The ending of our marriage is a tragedy. It really wrapped around my heart in a knot I'll never be able to undo. To my babies, my 6 little chicks, you were part of me. I was the mama duck who was consistently watering you to safety. I can see now, over the past 4 years, I was in a deep undercurrent that led us to danger. I never led you to darkness knowingly. I was so disoriented that I believed dark was light and light was wrong. I would do anything in this world for you. My willingness to sacrifice all for you was masterfully manipulated into something very ugly. I took from you all that was soft and safe and good.
This statement here is like a Rorschach test. What you think about her. I'm sure some of you who are watching along with me are gonna say she's super manipulative. She's using her emotions to be able to manipulate viewers and the judge and whoever else is involved. And some people might think that she's genuinely remorseful and was misled by Jodi Hildebrandt and only now is seeing the full consequences and implications of her actions. I'm not here to make a judgment on which it is. I can see elements of all of those. I don't see it being as cut and dry as she's a psychopath and she's trying to manipulate people for her advantage, or she was just completely misled by this evil woman, Jodi Hildebrandt, and was just completely unaware of the consequences of her actions. I think there were a lot of natural tendencies that she had, and in a lot of the comments that I'm hearing from the Jodi Hildebrandt video, influence from the church and the church's teaching that are very in line with what she and Jodi Hildebrandt were espousing and teaching anyway. So I think a lot of that influence, plus maybe her native inclinations towards how she might parent, again, which could be influenced by the church culture, along with Jodi Hildebrandt brings some authority and some permissiveness to allow and even encourage her to some of the more abusive actions. I guess what I'm trying to say is that I don't see the responsibility and the guilt as completely hers or completely not hers. It's a very complicated situation that I'm glad I don't have to be the one to judge the intent in this case.
For your mother. How terrifying this must have been for you. I will never stop crying. You're hurting your tender souls. You are each so precious to me. I'm sorry. My choice to live in fear of the world has created a great vulnerability and a blind spot for me, where I have broken hearts and I've caused people to suffer and I have betrayed sacred trust. Watching my community respond to my charges with justice and mercy and grace and love is all the more evidence to me how wrong I've been. This world is full of really good people.
I am kind of glad that I watched the Jodi Hildebrandt statement first, because one thing stands in very stark contrast. In Jodi Hildebrandt's statement, there was no I language except for her saying, like, I really love those kids. There was no overt taking of responsibility. She didn't say anything about what she chose to do or how she had potentially harmed others. It was a very defensive, very flat kind of statement. Whereas Ruby Franke, again, I'm not here to judge her intent or what she's trying to accomplish by making this statement, but at least in the words that she's using, saying that she had hurt people, the choices that she had made, those all seem more along the right path. Being able to actually take responsibility for her actions and recognizing the impact and the consequences that her choices had on the people closest to her.
And finally, I'm sorry for twisting God's word and distorting his doctrines. My My greatest desire is to stand in his court someday spotless and confident. And Judge Walton, I know that standing before you today is a necessary step towards that end. Thank you to you and your staff for facilitating my opportunity to take accountability and to answer for my charges. I am humbled and willing to serve a prison sentence as long as it takes to continue unraveling all of the misinformation I have believed and bought, swallowed, and acted out, and for my family to heal and for the community to heal. And I understand this is going to take time. I'm committed to continuing my learning until all of my toxic layers are shed, and I am ready to re-enter as a contributing member of our beautiful society. Thank you, Judge Walton.
Thank you for your statement, Ms. Frankie. Anything else, Mr. Winward?
No, Your Honor.
Anything else prior to the court imposing sentence?
No, Your Honor.
The sentence will be that Ms. Frankie serve 4 counts, 4 1 to 15-year sentences based on her convictions for 4 counts of aggravated child abuse. Again, they will be served consecutively pursuant to the parties' agreement and the applicable statute. Under the applicable statute, the court finds that that consecutive sentences are appropriate.
I will say again, because I watched the Jody Hildebrand statement earlier, the judge has a different demeanor towards Ruby Franke compared to how Jody Hildebrand handled herself during the statement, because a lot of what Jody Hildebrand's statements were about how she cared for the kids, she didn't want them to be hurt anymore, a lot of kind of dodging responsibility and just kind of wanting to look forward and move on to the future instead of acknowledging what she had actually done. The judge was a lot more combative in her hearing, calling out those inconsistencies. Well, you were the one who harmed them and you were the one who made these choices. And the judge presents and responds differently to Ruby Franke's statement because she had said all those things already. At least the words that she said had taken on the actual responsibility and the guilt of the crimes that she had committed. So there you are. That was Ruby Franke's statement. Very fascinating to watch, especially when you compare and contrast between Jody Hildebrand's statement too. So I'd encourage you to pop over and watch that if you haven't already, because the differences are very striking in the way that they approach these two statements, which I guess seem to be the last public statement they get to make about this case before the judge. Again, like I said, I'm not here to judge whether Ruby Franke is genuine in her apology and her statement about feeling the remorse and the guilt of her actions and her choices, but she does at least recognize, at least verbally saying the right things, doesn't recognize the people that she had hurt and the way that her family continued to rally around her even in the midst of all this. I'm not here to say whether they should rally around her or if they should abandon her. I think that's up to the families to decide. But her recognizing that she didn't deserve that does speak to maybe a little more insight into this situation, that she had made choices to hurt her immediate family, her kids, her husband, as well as the larger consequences of her siblings and her parents and how she had pushed them away as well. So it does seem like there's a little bit of a move, at least in the beginning of her statement, to put more of that on Jody Hildebrand and how she led Ruby Franke down a certain path that led to these choices. But again, like she said, the sentence is not going to change at this point, and it's going to be up to the Board of Parole or whatever it is in Utah to determine how long she actually serves in prison. And so maybe there's still not a lot of clarity regarding Ruby Franke and Jody Hildebrand, how you really split up the responsibility and the guilt in this situation. But what I can appreciate is how when she acknowledges the way she has hurt these people around her, primarily her kids as well as her husband, is that opens the door, if they're willing to step out to that, for some reconciliation, for there to be healing after she recognizes and able to say that she had hurt them and acknowledge that she had hurt them. I'm not saying that makes it easy. I'm not saying the kids even want that necessarily. I think that'll be up to them as they grow older, as they go through healing and counseling and therapy of their own, to be able to decide what they want that relationship with their mom to look like. But of course, I do want to wish the kids and the people who have been hurt, especially in this situation, I do hope for healing for them, for recovery, for them to be able to have good counseling so that they might begin to try to make sense and be able to incorporate what has happened to them into part of their story without it dominating their story. Well, everyone, thank you so much for watching this video. Again, there's a lot of information coming out recently because of the hearings, and so there's a lot of final statements like this, a lot of previous victims speaking out, especially in the case of Jodi Hildebrandt. And so we're doing our best to cover it. Again, like and subscribe so you can make sure you can stay up to date with all of our coverage, all of these reaction videos, and what else is going on with this case and other mental health news as well. Thank you so much for watching this video. I'll see you all next time.